conversations like that were conversations that I believe during that time period were very important. And that's actually one of the reasons why, so it's a good segue, because that's actually one of the things that attracted the elected office that I was working for to want to work with me, because they realized that I had a good command on what it meant to be socially conscious for the most part, and I was willing to do something about it. It's one thing for you to be able to talk and have these conversations about what needs to be done. It's another thing for you to say, you know what, let's grab a group of people, get some brothers and sisters together, and try to make that impact that's necessary. So that's one of the things that got me into a position where somebody said, you know what, he might be an asset.
Right. And I knew that you weren't going to end up with Leroy Cleveland, because it just, you know, he was just, you could tell. I hate, you know.
But he's been around a long time, man. A long time.
This is what I can say about
him. Is he still in office?
He's in state senate.
He's senator now, right?
Yeah, he's in state senate.
And he, but I think that he has done a pretty good job of bringing money back to the community.
Yeah, we actually helped us, right?
He gave us a citation when we did the domestic violence event. He gave us a citation for it.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it's in the archives with the Urban Enrichment Society.
Is that on film?
It's not on film, no. He gave it to us at the end of the event. He had, remember Al Canoe? Al Canoe used to go to the school and used to work for him.
Yes.
He's the one that presented it at the end of the event.
You gotta give me Al Canoe's.
Yeah, I'll do that. So I want to say this about Carmi. Despite the fact that my original introduction to him was a negative one, I did realize that what his responsibility was, he was great at it. So I want to say out the gate, despite the fact that I don't think he always presents well, but in the midst of what he's doing, he's like Tim Duncan, right? No matter how, he doesn't, he's not the most charismatic, but he gets the shot. He finds himself in position to get it done.
Yeah.
So in his ascension from city councils to state senate, I've always appreciated the fact that he's consistent. If you need him somewhere, he's there.
The other thing that he helped us do is the Andy Dufresne.
Yes.
Even though it didn't pan out all the way in the best way.
Right.
Some people didn't get paid.
Right. I would say that was Millie Regis from his office and Miss Donna Glass that gave us that introduction, and we kind of ran with it.
We should.
So, that was pretty cool. So what he's talking about is, I think it was the first year we started Urban Enrichment.
No, it was the second end.
No, it was the second. That was the second project that we did when we got into Urban Enrichment.
I think this was the end.
Because we did it for 2 years. That's why. We did it for 2 years straight, and then the last year we lost Andy Frank.
Different. I'm probably right.
Yeah, for the first year. So at this point, we just did the N-word buttons, right? After we did the N-word buttons, I get a phone call from Diane Glass. She's like, hey, do you have some young people that want to work? So I said, yeah, everybody wants to work. Why not? And mind you, I was about 21 at the time, and everybody in my environment was like 18, 19. So she said, all right, I have a couple of jobs with the U.S. Open. They're temporary, but they pay pretty good. At that point, it was $10 an hour when minimum wage at that point might have been like $6.50.
Right.
So I said, that's pretty good. And then they had a supervisor position for $25 an hour.
I think it was like 8 something around the time. Okay, but
it was security jobs for $10 an hour.
Security jobs.
Right. They had security, and then they had like the people that go pick up the ball from the court. So event staff, that's what they had. Event staff was the lowest paying position. So she says, do you have a couple of friends? I said, we could do better than that. So we actually promoted and did internal interviewing for Andy Frayne. We did the screening for Andy Frayne. And the way that we did it is that, let's say we had a young man that came off the basketball court. He got a copy of the flyer, hopped off the basketball court, came in and did an interview. And we didn't want people to feel like you had to come here dressed up in a suit and tie, especially if you couldn't afford it. So what we did after we screened them is we gave them a referral over to Andy Frayne. The thing that we couldn't do was the background check, the background, criminal background check. But we did everything else. Right. So we gave them a survey. We actually used Clara Muhammad School the second year.
We used Clara Muhammad School as a place to do the interview.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that gave us an ability to really help about, I want to say the first year we did about 30 people that we were able to help get employment. Wow. And then the second year, we didn't double that number, but we exceeded that number the following year.
Wow.
So, it was a means for us to be able to say, you know what, we don't want people to be judged based off of something that they can't specifically control. If someone's ambitious enough to do like what that young man did, he literally was like, y'all got jobs? And he came in with shorts and a t-shirt. And he was not shy about answering the questions that we had. He was very articulate, and he got the job that he was looking for. So that's the way that we were able to give back during that time period. And I think we weren't even a year old at that point. So I think at that point, when people saw that, they took advantage of the fact that there's an ability there to be able to organize, and that's what made the segue to the government process.
So this
Now it's
person,
heightened.
that her name was Glass.
Yeah, Diane Glass. Yes.
Is she what did she feel about what the organization they did, and did she continue to communicate with you?
She was ecstatic to the point where, towards the end, actually, I think this might have been the year you graduated. She used to do a scholarship because her son was murdered, and the scholarship was supposed to encourage community service and give about $1,000 to $1,500 towards college.
Mm-hmm.
She actually dedicated one of the scholarships to members of the Urban Enrichment Society. Mm-hmm. So anybody that we referred from the Urban Enrichment Society was able to get that scholarship, and that's because she knew out the gate that person had community service experience. So that wasn't a requirement that it needed to fill at that point. Right. So I would say for her, she was definitely ecstatic at the work that we were doing.
And we had other members of the Urban Enrichment Society too. Abdul,
right?
Abdul Beya,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
he was a member of Urban Enrichment Society.
We had him public speaking.
Yeah,
he was a public speaker.
He had an event with Danny Shaw.
He's into stocks now, man. You know,
he's heavy into stocks.
I didn't know that. Yeah, he's into stocks.
Yeah.
Nice. I gotta have the conversation.
I'll send you some of his videos and his channel. But JAHI introduced me to Professor Danny Shaw. Brother Kareem
is that right?
Brother William Kareem and I gave a lecture at John Jay with Danny Shaw.
Nice, I've seen him so long.
Yeah, he's actually in Zimbabwe now.
Is that right?
He sent me a text. He's doing well out there.
I see him on these news feeds from other countries. Every time I look, he's in another country.
From Reuters, he's usually on Russia Today, Reuters. So Abdul Beya actually gave a lecture with Danny Shaw back in the York College days.
Yeah.
This is like 2009, maybe 2008.
He was 19 at the time.
He was young.
He was a baby.
Me,
he was the biggest person, but he was a baby of the
He was 19 years old. Yeah, had to have been 18 or 19. Very, very young. Very, very just with the way he explained everything. And I think Ben Bilal was there too in the audience, and Sister Kalila,
right,
and the students at Claremont High School.
Right. That was for the Youth Leadership Conference.
That was for
Youth Leadership Conference. I remember that.
Yeah, we did at least two of them.
We did another one.
Yeah, we did two of them.
Yeah.
The first one we did, it was just us, and we presented to the students. And what was the young man's name? I think his name was Bilal. He got up and gave a speech just out of nowhere about us being better, us doing better what we can, and us being more aggressive about doing better for our community. I think it was Bilal Hassan, yes. And he's
probably so.
Yeah, he got up.
We'll find that footage for you.
You stand up and do it like that. Yeah, that sounds
he
like it.
He went straight in, and that inspired us to let the young people do the following Youth Leadership Conference. I think youth leading youth made a lot more sense to us after that. And we let, I think, him, Henry Gray. At the time, we had about 3 speakers, and we did the second one where the youth they just told us what they wanted to do, and we gave it to them. Right. And they made the event. They made the event possible. So, and me personally, I believe that was very fulfilling for the group, because sometimes we don't need to be the forefront of everything.
That's very we don't hear. I don't think our community and our audience don't hear enough of the involvement that the young men and women are really in, especially that making that transition from high school into the college area, and then from college into society and career. Right. We don't hear the stories, those in between stories. We don't hear I shouldn't even call them stories, but the in between events, because some of the things that you're telling our audience, man, is very inspiring, man.
Thank you.
It's very inspiring.
I want to say my overall focus is to have average everyday people feel connected to the solution. Like, I think a lot of times what we do is we put the solutions in someone else's hand, right? And that's why, for the most part, me and Hassan were having this conversation yesterday. I believe that, like, elected leaders are there for elected leader purposes, right? You don't elect a mayor to tell you that you need to take care of your children. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not what that individual's purpose is.
Okay.
That individual's purpose is to manage the city of New York. So to manage whatever city you're in, their budget, make sure that the policies are reflective of what the community's goals are. Our responsibility is to do those intricate things that elected officials don't have the individual time to do. So I want to say, if I'm going to tell a man that he needs to be a father, right, I should be able to walk up to a man or a group of men and say, we need to be better as men. We need to be better fathers. If I'm going to encourage someone to be able to be more community active, so if our streets are dirty and it's because we're throwing litter on the ground, I'm going to say, let's pick up a broom, and as a community, let's go make sure our streets stay clean. Those individual things where we encourage each other to do things shouldn't be something that elected officials have to put in the policy. If we're engaged, then we should be able to maintain our communities the way they need to, and tell them, bring us the money so we can make sure that those things happen.
That was the
my
issue.
divide, right?
I think that was the issue.
That
always,
is the issue.
even with Comrie. I mean, the whole thing was, I think, and that's the problem with Andy Dufresne, the hiring company with that was trying to, that we were screening people for to hire for the U.S. Open, was that there was this divide. There was an expectation, a really big expectation on our end, that we were gonna get jobs for people from, our communities that we were representing. We were getting people from Astoria, Queens, people from Southeast Jamaica. Brother Yakim's daughter got a job, Tammy. These are people that we knew, and it wasn't just people that we knew. It was people that were, from all over, from kids just graduating out of high school, and we even honestly we were able to bring Imam Ramadan with his security company, able to get a contract with Andy Dufresne. Was it Andy Dufresne? Am I saying it right?
Andy Dufresne was the name.
Andy Dufresne was the name.
Andy Dufresne Services.
Right, and and there was promises that were not kept on their part.
Right.
And it was this thing where and it ties into issues of like race and
you would
class
think that
issues.
you would think that it was race.
No, it is. Clearly.
Basically,
see,
that's important because. There were things that said, and I think that this probably happens a lot in politics, where promises are made and promises are not kept.
Right.
But it's not all the time because of race, right?
Right. I would say when it comes to promises kept, it's because elected officials, politicians have a tendency to overpromise and underdeliver. So one time I was
say that again. They have a tendency to do what?
Overpromise and underdeliver.
And that's
so you in your mind, you're like, I'm gonna make this entire community.
Oh, it sounds like a Donald Trump. That sounds like a Donald Trump thing, man.
Right.
Overpromise.
Oh yeah.
Man, we gonna do this.
Right.
Everybody's gonna have a job and training every part. Overpromise, underdeliver.
Right.
But that's a historical problem with black politicians.
I think that's a historical problem
with all politicians, but specifically if we're talking about
right.
You know what I mean?
I would say this is where I would divide that, right? I would say it's who gets away with it, right? If in a so let's say you go to an affluent community where they've done two things, right? Like we said, there's a vote, there's the promotion of the elected officials, so the support that they need, and then there's the money, right? If you go to a community that's lockstep with all three, or let's say even the two, the vote and the money, you can't get away with over promising and under delivering, because all they'll do is they'll put their physical dollar into another candidate, and they'll give them the exact same level of support that they may have given you. They'll switch that. When it comes to just being the one that gives the vote, a lot of times because that vote didn't cost you anything, sometimes you'll be willing, just because that person is already in office, to let that rock again. So I think a lot of times it's not necessarily black or white or even Latino, it's about the money. It comes down to the money. Whoever's going to allow me to overpromise and underdeliver, if that worked for the previous person that did it, the next person is going to do it.
Do we?